Welcome to the Auric Investigators Podcast with Vicki McHale, a mutant 4/6 emotional generator with a line 1 motivation, and Lauren Wenzel, a collective 5/1 mental projector. Join us as we deep dive into off the beaten path subjects. But be careful, because we might just make you think, or even better, burst a few outdated bubbles around what you've been led to believe is truth. Agree or disagree, it's okay, because we have nothing to prove. So let's get started. Hey, welcome to another episode of Auric Sleuths. I'm Vicki McHale, and this is my beautiful partner, Lauren Wenzel. Okay, well, today we are going to talk about synchronicity. And this may upset a few people because we're basically going to say that a lot of what you've been told about synchronicity is absolutely incorrect. Synchronicity does not necessarily mean it's a go from the universe, that you're supposed to go into a certain direction. For energy types, generators and manifesting generators, it is a part of our manifesting process, where for non-energy types, synchronicity absolutely shows up within your world. However, it's more of just a conversation with the universe. And even as generators and manifesting generators, learning what those synchronicities mean. Sometimes it's just a wink and a hello from the universe. And sometimes it's actually a synchronicity that it gives us that wink from the university or the universe saying, hey, you know that idea you put out? Now it's time to go into your inner authority and see if this is really the direction that you want to go. So figuring out what those are is absolutely very important. Now, I can tell you, I have outer vision, and I get synchronicity all day long. And in the beginning of my awakening, before I knew anything about human design or really anything about spirituality, I was getting all of this information off the internet and from here and there. And it basically told me that when you see a synchronicity, you're supposed to follow that synchronicity. And every once in a while it would turn out, but more often than not, it did not work out at all. And so this idea of synchronicity being a miracle, which it absolutely is a miracle, but it's not a miracle in the way a lot of us have been taught, in that this is the way that you're supposed to go. So I know for me, if I put something out to the universe, is I wonder if starting this program would be great, in building my business. And within an hour or a day, a week, whenever, somebody comes up and says, you know what, Vicki, you should start a podcast. And that was what I put out to the universe. I hear, hey, Vicki, you should put out a podcast. Well, if I'm sacral authority, I could fill into my sacral authority and right then and there decide, listen to that yes or no. And if I get that yes, I could go balls to the walls and start this. Now, I'm emotional. So for me, that means, okay, this is something that may be good for you. So I have to go through my emotional wave to get clarity on it. So, Lauren, how about you? How does synchronicity work for you as a projector?
So as a projector, it's really different. And I want to circle back around with how you use your emotional authority, because it's a little bit different, because you're both a reflector in your design and your personality. And so we want to circle back around with that, because you've been experimenting with that more and more.
Yes.
And really seeing how you can turn on those emotions and using your cognition. So as a projector, we get to wait to be recognized and wait for the invitation for something. And just in most of the spiritual communities, teachings, stuff about synchronicity, I hear so many people talk about, well, I got this synchronicity about, the love of my life and this guy. And even though he's like, abusive and toxic, or like, we're like twin
He's my twin
flames,
flame.
right?
You're over there, girl.
We're twin flames. I'm getting all these synchronicities. You're getting these synchronicities because your energy is focused on it. So what happens is when we're focusing on something, the universe just mirrors back what we're focusing on. So there was this time last year I was talking to somebody, and I kind of already knew it wasn't a match, but we had a really strong connection. And, we got along. There were certain things that I really appreciated with this person, but we just weren't on the same page in certain areas that were really important to me. But I kept getting these synchronicities. I would see his zodiac sign when I was driving. I would see the type of car, that his zodiac sign was right in front of me. And I'm like, oh my God, it's synchronicities. Like I was falling
I
into
get
that trap.
stalked by cars because of that.
Right. And so these things, if I would have gotten into that belief system, I would have self-abandoned my inner authority. Because when I talked about it, I'm a mental projector. And I'm so glad that I know my inner authority. I'm so glad I know myself as a projector, even though I'm deciding to know the other. And having really amazing soundboarding people that can just hold that space for me, I was able to talk it out and feel the frequency of like, hey, when this person does this, it brings up this for me. Or, like we have different values. We live in different states, like the communication like is inconsistent, and just hearing about all that stuff. And with certain challenges, of course, these things can be healed, or you can work with somebody when they show up. They just have to be on the same page. But if somebody isn't on the same page, I don't give a F about synchronicities. It's just you're fooling yourself. And that's what happens in a lot of these things is like, yeah, they're like tools. It's like kind of like a reminder of like, oh, what we're focusing on, or just like kind of like like a wink, as Vicky was saying, from the universe. But for me, just kind of like surrendering the synchronicities I was seeing, and really following my inner authority and my intuition and what I felt true in my body, what was going through. I know I made the right decision for me. If I didn't, I would have gone into self-abandonment, probably had a really, trauma bonded relationship, and just ended in a lot of heartache, which that wouldn't have been fair for either of us. So the way that synchronicities now work for me, because it does show up in my chart a little bit, is like I'll see repeating numbers a lot. And I just kind of see that as like the universe kind of just like giving me a little hug. Like it's like, hey girl, like I'm winking at you. Or if I have a thought about something and I see like a bird or an animal or certain like something that mirrors something that I was thinking about, I'm like, okay, so I send that back out to the universe and I just wait. Because if I initiate or I take action as a projector, that's going out of my strategy, and that can end in bitterness because nobody's inviting that. It's just a thought. So I really get to see if somebody's bringing that back to me and saying like, hey, Lauren, like I had this question about this, or can you tell me about this? And then I can follow through more with, serving that person, or if they want to start working together or putting something, an event or a program out in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so funny. As a matter of fact, I have to sit there and write down because I had to put it out to the universe, like, should we do something on twin flames? Because I have been kind of deep diving that, because that's kind of been a concern of mine for a while. So I think we do need to talk about twin flames and the synchronicity, but I don't want to turn this one into that. So yeah, so absolutely. So for me, as an energy type, it is more of a, here, look at this could be it, where you have to actually wait for the invitation. Now, I have heard some projectors say that if they do get that synchronicity, then that's a lot of times they almost get this feeling, this inner knowing that the invitation is coming. So
Nice. Yeah. And it's going to be different for every person depending on where those synchronicities show up in somebody's chart. And as energy types, so it works a little bit differently. So let's talk about that, Vicky, since you're a generator, because for you can just wait to respond. I mean, you're not initiating, but you're still in that waiting period and then in the response, right? So if you have a thought, if you have like a download or something that you're wanting to manifest or, just kind of experiment with, and you kind of send that out to the universe. And then what are the synchronicities that come along those lines? And then how do you respond to that using your emotional authority?
well, I'll tell you, when we were discussing, should we do a podcast? We just kind of put it out there and waited. And within a matter of days, somebody said, you should do a podcast on this. Or
you get synchronicities like I've never seen anybody before in my life. Like it's like insane.
It's
Insane.
absolutely insane. And I think it has something to do with the mutation, because I think out of all of the, like I have the 19 like 4 times, and the mutating channels, I have almost all of them. So I definitely think something, because one day I was just normal and the next day it was like, what the hell's going on here? One day I'm normal, the next day trees are talking to me. It's like, oh my God. So yeah, it was overwhelming at first. And like you were talking about, like I get 1111 or 555 or 999, and 909 and 911 are 2 of my big synchronicities. And on license plates, I'll just be driving and I'll look up and there's, one of those. So you just get to the point where you kind of got to laugh about it, and for the longest while, it was almost like a little creepy, like what in the heck is going on? But I'll tell you a story about what happened. This was a synchronicity that happened for me, because I've been stuck for a while. I have like frozen, and like I'm getting the synchronicities frozen. So all of a sudden, and it's not something I really had ever thought about. It's just all of a sudden I was getting the word frozen all the time. So I was like, okay, this is something I have to look at. That's kind of how the universe talks to me, is when something just keeps coming up in my awareness, I know, okay, there's something here, something I have to look at. So I put it out and I'm like, okay, I don't know what this means. And I've been doing all of this healing and all of this shadow work and all of this inner child work. And so the other day, my friend calls me and he said, hey, you gave me permission to kind of go into your energy, and because he's experimenting on a healing process that he's working on. He said, so I went into your energy and he said, I cleared some stuff around your heart. He said, but something came up about your lymph nodes and also around drowning. And I went, oh my God. He says, what? And I said, well, I have been clearing my lymph nodes, and one got blocked, and I got like this muddle that like I had to press on to literally get the lymph to flow. I said, now drowning.
Wait, how do you do that? That's so interesting. Well, you can answer that. So
yeah, I'll teach you how to make your lymph flow later, baby. I lost my train of thought. What was I talking about? I'm having a junior moment. Oh, okay. So the drowning, and I told him, I said, when I was younger, I did almost drown. I said, but it wasn't that big a deal. I wonder why you picked that up. And he says, I don't know. I just know it was there. So I thought, okay. So I left it alone. Like I had no idea what it was. I recalled the incident and went, yeah, not a big deal. Well, the next day I went to a pool party and I'm in the pool talking to my friends. And this woman I had never met just comes up and out of the blue, she starts telling me and my friends, I almost drowned when I was little. And she tells us this whole story. And she goes, and I just learned like I have to go into this program to learn how to breathe again. And she said, and even to get, over this, I learned to scuba dive. And I realized that, when I'm scuba diving, I feel safe. And I'm sitting here and I'm trying to smile and I'm thinking, oh my God, this woman's telling my story to me, a little bit different circumstances, but even down to the scuba diving. Like I'll scuba dive like crazy, but don't ask me to swim on top of the water. And there's certain bodies of water I won't go in. So I went home a little while later and I said, okay, I know I've got to look at this. Like this is something, like this was a synchronicity for me to look at. So I went in and just started feeling into it and started doing my inner child work. And so I'm feeling my feelings, but they're getting stuck. And so I had to go in and kind of talk to my inner protectors and firefighters to say, okay, please let me feel
Can you
this.
reference what that's from?
It's from, and I'm just learning about it, but basically, when we have traumas, a lot of times we have inner parts of us that create almost like these protectors for us. So if we're having a really bad trauma, we might create a protector that takes us outside of their body or stops us from doing something. And we have the firefighters and it's called internal family systems. And again, I'm just learning about it. And we have the firefighters that when we start feeling an energy like we've had before, the firefighters put our body on alert. And then the managers, they kind of come in and they try and keep control of the situation. So we've got these inner beings in certain circumstances that really hold us back. And a lot of times, if you've been trying to heal something for a long time and you can't, they say just let it go, and you've tried to let it go, it's because you may have these inner beings that are there to protect you. And they don't care what's happening in your outside world. They're still there helping that 5-year-old, 6-year-old child, whatever it is. So I have been learning about this. So I went inside and started kind of talking to these inner beings and asked them, please let me feel this. And I had to like negotiate with them. So anyhow, once I put them in their place, kind of not in their place, but got them out of the way to agree to allow me to look at this, this horror came up. And I didn't even realize in what terror I was. And so basically what happened out of this is my inner protector came in and basically shut down, like just made me numb. Like I remember the drown, like I knew I was drowning. I knew I couldn't catch my footing. It's like I was walking and all of a sudden the bottom fell out from underneath me, my foundation, and I just started drowning. Well, fortunately, my aunt, who was a lifeguard at the time, she saw me. So one minute I'm drowning, and the next minute I'm being dragged out. Well, what happened from that? So once I felt that, and I felt that rush and went through all of kind of that trauma, I started coughing, and all of a sudden my lungs just filled with air, and I can't really explain it, but I'm breathing completely differently now. Like I used to not be able, when they'd say like, bring the air down and fill up your belly. Like I could, but I had to really push. And now it's just like natural, but I started coughing and choking like somebody who was expelling water from their lungs. I'm like, holy crap. So then I was like, okay, well, I got through this, and spirit was like, oh, no. Now we have to get to the nitty gritty of it. Well, basically what happened was, when I get that feeling of fear, like my foundation is falling away from me, my firefighters come in and set the alarm, and my protector comes in and shuts me down. And then I wait kind of frozen for somebody to save me. And since my divorce, I've been kind of doing that. I've been working through it, but not understanding it. So I freeze waiting for somebody to come in and save me. And I had been working on this, healing the vagus nerve and doing all of this. Well, this is what it is. So, and then they explained to me basically that I never had a firm foundation growing up. And it was around that time something specific had happened in my life. My mom was marrying a new man, and things were on shaky ground. And that drowning was kind of representative of the foundation coming out. And basically my whole life I've been drowning, trying to manage my life and control it so I could have that solid foundation. But because I wasn't working within my own inner authority and outside of alignment, everything just fell apart, even though I managed to do it for a long time. And so now I am at the point where I have to heal to get past that point of being frozen and waiting for somebody to save me. And so that to me is a miracle within human design, because more and more these things are opening up to me to where it's not just helping me to chart my path, but I've actually entered into, they're showing me where I need to heal. And so that was a synchronicity that when that woman said it, it was like just a knowing. And it was like, okay, I got to go home and look at this. This is something big. And that the biggest aha to me was I was looking at all of these different things, but it was something that I had completely forgotten about that completely changed the course of my life. And so that was a synchronicity that I needed to follow. So,
And do you feel like when that happened to you, like when you were young, that shut down part of your emotions too?
oh, absolutely, because I went back and I looked over times in my life. Anytime a major thing happened within my life to where my foundations were shaken, I I couldn't function. Like I was a top executive within my industry for many years. And because I didn't recognize red flags, I kept thinking that the woman I had worked for and did 70 and 80-hour weeks for 10 years would never do to me what she did to other people. When she did that to me, not only did she take out my foundation, she told everybody in the company that if she caught them talking to me, they would be fired on the spot. So people,
Wow.
so I lost as a 4, I'm a 4/6.
Yeah.
As a 4, I lost my foundation and my network. And I just I didn't even know what to do to, I mean, I knew I needed to go out and find a new job at that point, but I would just sit at home. It's my husband at the time finally came in and said, you need to go find a job, push me out the door. But I was, a couple of years before that, my girlfriend had passed away unexpectedly. And that was kind of, well, losing the job. Then my best friend passed away. And so then my friendship network fell apart, and then my marriage fell apart. And so as a 4, it's been devastating, but and I'm a 6. So everything that wasn't serving me fell apart. And I have this thing where I freeze and I'm waiting for somebody, to come and save me. And so it's just been huge. It was a turning point for me in my healing process now to just work through that. So I don't hopefully that explains the synchronicities that you watch and you pay attention to, because
Yeah.
I think there's always an excitement, especially in the beginning when you're first waking up,
Mm-hmm.
seeing through the veil and understanding that the universe talks to you. There's an excitement. But when it's a synchronicity that you need to pay attention to, or it's something to check in with your inner authority, there's just the knowing.
Yeah, I love how you describe that process of really tuning into all those synchronicities and then responding. Like, okay, what is this showing me? Where do I need to go with this? And then that led you more into your healing, and then you tapping into your emotions.
Yeah.
Because with your emotional authority, so in our human design class, we are kind of going deeper into inner authority and being taught in a little bit of a different way. Because if you have like your design and your personality, so the red and the black lines, and then together it's your chart, right? So when your red lines, if there's not a channel that in the red lines in your design that is your inner authority, and then it's the mind that's kind of getting in the way of your inner authority. And so we're tapping more into what can turn on your inner authority more through cognition, or you can call it tone, depending on where you're looking at it. And Vicky's cognition, her tone is outer vision, and that's synchronicities. And she totally described it beautifully and really tunes into all the synchronicities that she's being presented, and then just her different design, being motivated by that fear, the investigation, getting to the bottom of it, and also how she's viewing life. And these are really like more in-depth, complex terms in human design, but I'm pretty sure most of our listeners kind of have a sense of these things. And if you don't, if you have any questions, put them in the comments, reach out to us. We love to know your experience with synchronicities and how it works for you, if you understand it based on your design, or if you don't really see the correlation and you just see the synchronicities. We'd really love to hear your feedback.
Well, yeah. Would you like me to talk a little bit about my outer authority and how that all came about?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Well, I decided to try a plant medicine.
Oh, you mean outer vision?
Outer vision. I'm sorry.
Uh-huh.
And so we had this first dose. It was actually it wasn't the mushrooms, it was MDMA. And hope, like, are the police going to come to my house and arrest me? I'm too pretty to go to jail. So I took that and I went and I laid down, and all of a sudden my human design guides were talking to me. Like, all these people are processing trauma, right? And my human design guides come in and they start going, we're going to teach you something about how to use your outer vision, or your determination, your determination, and to help you, because you're a reflector both in design and in personality. We're going to teach you how to use that to kind of make decisions when you're having a hard time with your inner authority. So I'm like, okay. And so they're just talking to me. And then I was like, well, tell me. And they're like, just hold on. So then the shaman came up and he said, Vicki, it's time for this dose. And he handed it to me. And as I went to get it, it was like a garage door shut down. And this nausea came up, and I kind of sat back, and he looked at me, he says, "What's the matter?" I said, "Hang on a second." And it calmed right down. And I went to take it again, and the garage door came right back. And I looked at him and I said, "Sweetie, my inner authority is telling me absolutely not to take that." He said, "Well, your inner," and they know about human design. I help them with human design in their business and personal lives. And he says, "Well, if that's what's happening." So once he left, my guide started telling me is you can use your determination as open and closed. So if something is absolutely not for you, it's just a no. And you're going to feel that kind of garage door come down with it, start playing with it. So, and then they were telling me about the nervous and the hot and the cold, and how that people could also use their determination for that also. And feeling into that is, if you're a hot determination and somebody comes in and makes you an offer, or says or does something, if all of a sudden it makes you feel cold, it's a no for your body. Now, I don't know how that's going to work for everybody, but this was the first I had ever heard of this. And we're just in PHS class right now. So I reached out to our teacher, and shout out to Raquel Reyna, who just published her first book, Are You a Mutant? And who is actually a guest speaker at the Human Design Conference in Denver this week. We just adore her, and she's going to be on our podcast soon.
Yay.
So anyhow, I reached out to her, and I'm like, I told her about this whole thing, and she's like, "Oh my God, Vicky, you're supposed to wait for me to teach you these things. Like, you're 10 steps ahead of me." She says, "This is something that's not very well known within human design, but John Martin, who he was very well known in human design, I believe he was a student abroad. I'm not sure, but he passed away recently." She says, "This was something that was brought to him. This was intel that was brought to him. And him and his partner were actually working on it at the time." But your guides are absolutely right, is especially if you're a reflector on both sides, it's very difficult for you to really feel that emotional wave. So you can use your determination of that, open or close. And I know you've been playing with it a little bit because you're closed, right?
Yeah, so determination is the diet in the primary health system. They call it the four radical transformations, when you really align. And I know we're getting a little sidetracked
Yeah.
right now from the synchronicities, but this kind of helps with it, really, with your inner authority, depending on if somebody has synchronicities, and just making sure you're operating your own GPS system correctly. So with diet, it's how we take in information and also what we eat. And for a projector, my earbud came up. For a projector, it can be really helpful with knowing how to tap into the inner authority and what invitations to accept and what not, and which ones not to. So it's been really helpful for me to, I'm like stumbling and rattling today with all this retrograde energy. My little mental projector head is like, woo. But anyways, yeah, for anybody who's a mental projector or a reflector, just know that the transits really affect us. The astrology, even if you're pretty open and sensitive, so just being in tune with all that, if you feel called to that, it kind of helps. So when you align to the four radical transformations, your life radically changes. And we are going through diet right now, and me and Vicky have the same color, but the arrows are opposite. So she's open and I'm closed. So for me, I'm pretty much closed until something opens me up. And I feel it through my tone, which is touch. So something has to touch me to open me up. Because for the most part, I'm closed. I'm just like, no, 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 until I feel that safety, that comfort, that somebody that really sees me opens me up, and I'm like, oh, and then I feel this energy, and it feels like success as a projector. But when you're so conditioned to be your not self, it's like my mind will be like, well, you have to just be open and say yes to everything. And it can come from like the open ego, which wants to like just overgive, or the open emotional center, which wants to avoid any emotional disappointment or that amplification. So it's just really helpful to know these things when you are either waiting to respond or initiating or waiting for the invitation, stuff like that.
Well, and I know it works with my synchronicity too, because when you see the synchronicity, you either feel open to that synchronicity or that garage door comes
Mhm.
and it's like, ugh, no. So I'm still experimenting with that, but I think the biggest thing I wanted to get out there today was there is a lot of misinformation out there about synchronicity.
Mhm.
And it's not your intuition, it's not spirit guiding you. I think it's spirit challenging you to learn what your inner authority is. And that's why these things come up and then they don't work. And if you just keep doing it over and over, and I cannot tell you how many people get upset because they followed their synchronicity. And
Mhm.
happens a lot of
Mhm.
times in spiritual communities or what have you. And so they'll follow the synchronicity and the synchronicity doesn't work. So then the guru or whoever they're working with says, well, then it's a lesson that spirit wanted you to learn. No, well, yes, that is a lesson spirit wants you to learn, but it's more about learning your inner authority and understanding what those synchronicities absolutely are. And I know there's a lot of people that would not necessarily agree with this. But you know what? I don't know if they not necessarily agree with this. I think there would be some, but I think for some it might be that aha light bulb moment.
Where there might be some resistance at first of like,
Yeah.
well, I'm with my soulmate, and even though like we fight all the time, or it's super toxic, or he ghosts or she ghosts me, or this or that, and it's just like, the universe, God, source, it doesn't want you to suffer. It doesn't want you to be in pain. And so the synchronicities, it's kind of like I said in the beginning, it's what you're focusing your energy on. And when you come back into your inner authority, first and foremost, then you will know the truth and what's correct for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's all I have, unless you have anything else. I think we kind of went off the beaten path a little bit, but I do feel like it was necessary because it kind
Hmm.
of all came together. So, but now I have
Yeah.
50,000 different ideas for podcasts. So,
Yeah, and that's what we're here for. We're here to go off the beaten path and just share, I'm collective circuitry, so I'm really here to just share what I'm learning, share what I know, share what I've been experimenting with. And, Vicky, your genius and your mutation and your individuality with everything as well.
yeah, absolutely. And, that's my whole life. People, why can't you just let things be? Well, now you know. So, okay, well, I'm going to end it there. Thank you all for being here. As always, Lauren, I love you, and we will see you next time. Bye bye.
Love you. Thank you so much, everyone. And we would love to hear your feedback, any questions, any topics that you want us to go over in our podcast, and hop on to our Facebook group as well. We'll put the link in the bio, the description for how you can join there. We go live in there a couple times a month, and answer any questions. So, yeah. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye bye. Hey, that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, we absolutely love your feedback. So check out those links below and reach out with your insight, feedback, and even your ideas. And until next time, remember...
That's all, folks.